Kusangpo. Welcome to Bhutan e-learning project. I am Karma Wangmo. This is an English lesson, Key Stage 2 for classes 4 to 6. Now, before we begin with today's lesson, let us start our lesson with meditation. I would like to request you all to take a position, be seated comfortably, and then let us do a meditation for a minute. This meditation is to thank our King, our government, and people around us for taking measures to keep us safe and sound. So shall we start? Are you ready? Okay, let's begin. 1, 2, 3. Okay, stop. Let us come to today's lesson. Today's lesson is on how to summarize a story. So, today's topic is summarizing a story. I know when I write the topic summarizing a story, it's not something that is unfamiliar to you. Everybody is familiar with it. So, let us learn some of the tips on how to make a summarizing perfect one. So, before we start with the lesson, let us look at the learning outcomes. So after attending this lesson, I expect you all to tell me what is a summary. You should be able to tell what is a summary. Then you should be able to tell when summarization can be used. And finally, write a summary of the story. So these are the lesson objectives for today's lesson. After attending this lesson, I expect you to tell what is a summary, tell when summarization can be used, and finally write a summary of a story. Now, let us look at what is a summary. I'll give you something time. I want you to give some work to your brain to think on what is a summary. I'll give you 5 seconds to think on it. Okay, I guess you have already thought about what is a summary. A summary is a shorter version of text that highlights its key points. It should be short and to the point. So, a summary, can you read along with me? A summary is a shorter version of a text that highlights its key points, and a summary should be short and to the point. I hope I made it clear what is a summary. Now, let us look at when can summarization be used. I'm sure that you know when can summarization be used, but anyway, let us learn together. We can use summarization when the text is too long. We can also use summarization when we need to emphasize on key points. And finally, we can also use when we write a book review. So let's say you have a very lengthy text or a very lengthy story and you don't have a time to look into all the points. So that time summarization is going to be of great help. And in summarization, you must ensure that you have all the important details in it. Summarization can also help you when you're writing a book review. Let's take an example. You want to suggest a book to your friend. That time, if a friend asks, "What's the book about?" you cannot read the whole text to your friend. That time, the summarization is going to be of great help. Now, when we write a summarization, there are some tips that you need to follow. If you follow those tips, you can write a great summary. So let us look what are the few things that you need to keep in mind when you are writing a summary. So things to look into while summarizing. Number 1, before you write a summary, first thing is you must read. Without reading, you cannot write. So let's say you are going to write a summary of a story. Without reading a story, you cannot write the summary of the story. So you must read the story and then you can write a summary. Next thing, when you read, keep in mind the big fives. Keep in mind the big fives. I'll let you know what are those big fives, but for now, when you read, keep in mind the big fives. And finally, your summary should include everything that one needs to understand without reading the entire piece. So as I told you, when you want to suggest a book to your friend, you cannot read the whole story. So that time, your summary should have all those important details which will make your friend to understand what the story is all about. So your summary should include all those important details. So can we read together what are the things we need to look into while summarizing? Number 1, before you write, first you must read. Second, when you read, keep in mind the big fives. Then your summary should include everything that one needs to understand without reading the entire piece. Now, I told you to park that big five. Let us come back to what are those big fives. Number 1, we have somebody. Now, when we say somebody, we are talking about the characters in the story. Somebody. Number 2, we have wanted. When we say wanted, we are talking about what the character wanted to do or the characters wanted to do. Number 3, we have but. But what happened in the story? Number 4, we have so. So, what did the character do to solve the problem? And finally, number 5, we have then. Then how was the problem solved? And these are your big fives. So when you are reading a text, you should keep in mind these big fives. So what are these big fives? Can we revisit it again? We have somebody, we have wanted, we have but, we have so, and we have then. It's easier for you to remember because you have 5 fingers and there are 5 big fives. Just like your 5 fingers, you can remember those big fives on your finger. somebody, wanted, but, so, and then. So, these are the big fives. Is it easier for you to remember? If you wish, you can take some notes on it. I'll give you some time to take down the notes. Okay. Now, let us take a sample story and discuss how summarizing can be done using the big fives as well as the details that we discussed in the earlier session. So, I have a picture there. Can you guess the title of the story by looking at the picture? I know you have your answers on the fingertips because it's a very famous story that every one of us have heard about. So the title of the story is The Three Little Pigs. It's a fictional fable. One day their mother said, "Dearest sons, you are old enough and big enough to leave home and start your own life. Be wise and take good care of yourself and of each other." So the three pigs left home and they each decided to build a house. The first little pig gathered some straw and built his house very quickly. "Now the wolf can't catch and eat me," he said happily. The second little pig made his house of sticks. "Great," he thought. "Now the wolf can't eat me either." His house didn't take very long to build either. They were playing and singing, and all the while the third little pig was still building his house of bricks. The other two little pigs laughed at him for working so hard, but he didn't mind. Instead, he said, "When the big bad wolf comes, you will see what happens." Sometime later, the pigs were working outside when all of a sudden the big bad wolf came. Each pig went into his house to hide. Little pig, let me come in," said the wolf to the first little pig. "Not by the hair on my chinny chin," said the first little pig bravely. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house," the wolf said. He huffed and he puffed and he blew the first little pig's house away. The pig squealed and ran to his brother's house, but the wolf huffed and puffed and blew away the stick house too. The two little pigs squealed and ran into the brick house their brother had built. The wolf huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed, but even with all that huffing and puffing, he couldn't blow the brick house down. But this was a cunning wolf. He had another idea. He decided to break in the house through the chimney. But the clever little pig had already thought of that. There was a pot of boiling water shimmering away on the fire. The big bad wolf fell into the pot and he died. The two pigs understood their brother's lesson and decided not to be lazy anymore. The very next day, they built houses of bricks. Now, the first and the second little pigs had all the time in the world to play and to sing. The third little pig joined them, and the three lived happily ever after, safe and sound in their little brick house. So this is the story of three little pigs. I hope you read with me. Let us learn how these big fives are used in the summary. We have the title of the story, which is The Three Little Pigs. Then we have somebody, which means the character in the story. We have the pig brothers and the wolf. Then we have wanted, which means what did the characters wanted to do. So they wanted to build houses. Each pig wanted to build their own house out of different materials. It's but there. But what was the problem in the story? They built their houses quickly with straw and stick with less planning, and the big bad wolf blew off the two houses. So what did the character do then? The character ran off to the third brother's house, and finally, how did the problem get solved? All the three pigs decided to build houses of brick, although the third brother did so. Using this, can you write a summary for the, which means what did the characters wanted to do? So they wanted to build houses. Each pig wanted to build their own house out of different materials. It's but there. But what was the problem in the story? They built their houses quickly with straw and stick with less planning, and the big bad wolf blew off the two houses. So what did the character do then? The character ran off to the third brother's house, and finally, how did the problem get solved? All the three pigs decided to build houses of brick, although the third brother did so. So these are the big fives that are used in the summary. So let us look. I hope you might have the same in your mind. Now using this, can you write a summary for the three little pigs so that we can discuss and see whether we have followed all those guidelines or not. So I'll give you some time to write. Okay, are you done? Shall we look at the summary? The story, The Three Little Pigs, is about the three pig brothers who leave home and decides to build three houses of different materials. The first two brothers built their house built their houses quickly with straw and stick with little planning, whereas the third brother spends entire day and builds a brick house. The big bad wolf blew off 2 houses as he wanted to eat the pigs. The 2 brothers ran off to the third brother's house, but the wolf couldn't blow his house. Finally, the 2 brothers built houses of bricks. So that's the summary of 3 little pigs. I hope you have the same as that. I'm sure you might have followed the guidelines and used those big 5s to write the summary. So if you're following those big 5s and the guidelines that we discussed in the earlier session, I'm very sure that you might have an amazing summary. Finally, as we come to an end of this session, let us revisit what we have learned. So, can I ask you some questions? Are you ready to answer my questions? So, I want to check whether the learning objectives are being fulfilled or not. What is a summary? When can summarization be used? And what are the big 5s? Okay, I'll give you some time to think on the answers for the given questions. So, what is a summary? A summary is a shorter version of a text that highlights its key points. Did you have the same answer? May not be exactly the same, but the answer that you have might have meant the same. Thank you. Second, when can summarization be used? Summarization can be used when the text is too long, when we need to emphasize on key points, and when we write a book review. Is that okay? And what are the big 5s? Somebody, wanted, but, so, and then. So these are the big 5s. And finally, I want you all to choose a story from the text and read it. As I said, without reading you cannot write. So read it. After reading it, write a summary on the story that you chose. I expect you all to follow the guidelines. When you are reading, keep in mind the big 5s, highlight the important key points, make your story a short one, and then summarization can be done in a perfect way, and you become a perfect summary writer. Thank you for attending this lesson. I'll see you in my next lesson.